Hey guys, it's Spoonie. I'm a huge horror fan, so naturally I love Halloween. I've actually got a Halloween comic book here that I want to take a look at. It's called WildStorm Chamber of Horrors. It was published by Image Comics in 1995, so a couple of years before DC bought WildStorm. Now, first of all, you've got a freaking awesome cover by Simon Bisely. It's Death Below fighting off a legion of pumpkin demons. Now, unfortunately, there is no Death Below story in here. This is a really sweet cover, but it's unrelated to the content. Despite being a WildStorm title, this is pretty much just a WildCATs book. So you can see here this is actually a collection of 4 different stories with a framing sequence. If you look at the credits, you'll see some recognizable names, such as writer Ron Mars, artist Tom Rainey, and probably most noteworthy, the first story about Warblade is drawn by Bernie Wrightson. Bernie Wrightson is a great artist who used to work on sort of supernatural mystery series like DC's House of Secrets and House of Mystery. And most notably, he is the co-creator of Swamp Thing. So the first story about Warblade begins with him describing a recurring dream that he has. He visits his parents' grave at a cemetery, and they emerge from the ground as zombies. The zombie parents turn into Daemonites, the shape-shifting alien race the WildCATs are at war with. The Daemonites overpower Warblade, and they force him to confront his weaknesses, such as failing to save his parents. Daemonites start to tear him apart when he finally wakes up. He's in the Smithsonian Museum with WildCATs team member Savant. Savant tells him that confronting his fears are the best way to move past them, and that sometimes you have to take a hard look at yourself in the mirror. Warblade stares at a crystal goblet he's holding and remarks that he doesn't always like what he sees in the mirror. This story ends with Warblade and Savant heading off to join the others at a party. We then switch to one of the framing sequences where we can see the rest of the WildCATs team has been waiting for these two. Emp, or Lord Emp, tells them a story of back in the day when he used to use the human alias Saul Baxter. Emp's story takes place in the 1950s. He was in California at the time trying to secure aerospace contracts, the profits of which allowed him to build the Halo Corporation, which is the base of operations for the WildCATs team. He was set up on a blind date with a tall, statuesque woman with a large beehive hairdo. The woman didn't actually say anything, more grunting in the affirmative. Emp didn't care too much because all he was looking for was a beautiful girl and a fun night on the town. His wealth and status from signing those aerospace contracts with the military meant that they had access to elite Hollywood parties. After leaving the parties, Emp takes his date up onto a hill overlooking the city for a makeout session. As soon as he starts to kiss her, she finally speaks up and says that she needs to go home. As he drives her home, he thinks to himself that the reason she hasn't spoken before is because she has a raspy voice that sound like insect legs rubbing together. He spots police lights in the rear view and he pulls over. Cops surround the car, and suddenly an axe-wielding murderer jumps out of the back seat. Before he's able to swing his axe, the police shoot and kill him. While obviously relieved at stopping the axe murderer, the cops are confused as they were supposed to be looking for somebody with a hook for a hand. They get to her place and start having some drinks. They're able to resume their hookup when spiders crawl into Emp's mouth. As he backs away from his date, he notices that spiders are crawling all over her. Emp uses a psychic blast to try to slow her down, but it actually splits her head open. Apparently her head was just a husk full of spiders. This did little to slow her down though, so Emp locked himself into a room. He saw human-sized figures cocooned in spiderweb and understood that that would be his fate. As the Spider-Woman began to break down the door to get into the room, Emp finds a can of her hairspray. He uses his lighter to create a little flamethrower, and he sets her on fire as well as the house. He's able to escape from the burning house, and then later returns to get a copy of the coroner's report. This woman kept her hair up and only sprayed it and never washed it. The report said this created a habitat for the spiders, which ended up eating through to her brain. Emp is more concerned by the fact that the spiders were able to operate in concert and essentially puppet this woman. He decides to swear off blind dates as he doesn't want any more weirdness. As we drive away, we can see a hook attached to his rear bumper. Now, I actually thought this story was kind of cute. You had a lot of sort of urban legend tropes in here. You've got the couple making out, and then there's the axe murderer in the back seat. The concept of a woman with a beehive hairdo that was full of insects is not uncommon. And then just in the final panel with the hook for a hand that's seen hanging from his bumper. Next up is Zealot, who has a tale from the 1600s, specifically during the Salem witch trials. This involved a character called Tapestry, who is essentially a godlike magic user. Think the Wonder Woman villain Circe. Anyways, the story is about a young brother and sister. While walking through the woods, they stumble across Tapestry leading a coven of witches. They're talking about taking over the town of Salem. The sister sneezes and gives away their location. As the two run from the witches, they use their knowledge of the area to lure some of them into a quicksand pit. This slows Tapestry and her witches down long enough for the kids to reach the town well before them. Initially, the kids aren't believed until moments later when the coven shows up. Knowing now that the danger was real, the townspeople emerge and defeat the witches. And afterwards, they had the famous witch trials, during which anyone convicted was hung. After the conclusion of the trial, the children finally returned home with a feeling of safety, only to find Tapestry there waiting for them. She confronts the two of them for ruining her plans. She says that rather than kill them now, she's going to let them live and constantly be a shadow presence in their lives. She wants them to grow uneasy, always looking over her shoulder until finally the moment when Tapestry will get her revenge. And the story ends there. And finally, it's Savant's turn to tell her story. Her story is also set in the past, in the early 1700s. She was in the Caribbean looking for a pirate. This pirate was reportedly in the possession of a magic mirror. She arrives on the island too late, and she sees that her target has already been executed. She tracks down his first mate at the local jail, hoping to get answers. The man explains to her the curse of the mirror. The mirror is able to show you your greatest dream, but it always comes true with negative repercussions. For instance, the ship's captain saw himself wearing thick ropes of gold chain around his neck. He later ended up getting hung. There was another story of a man who was estranged from his wife. He looked in the mirror and saw them close together lovingly, only for them to be executed side by side. And finally, there was a cabin boy on the ship who greatly admired the captain's sword. Well, he was able to get it when the captain killed him with it. She frees the man and tells him to lead her to it because she doesn't believe in curses. He leads her into a secret alcove where the ship had run aground. He says that the ship is rotten and he's afraid of the mirror, so he refuses to go in. Savant didn't care as he'd already completed his purpose. Savant heads in alone, ignoring all the treasure and looking just for the mirror. She finds the mirror and is unable to stop herself from glancing into it. She sees herself surrounded by money. Suddenly, the rotten floor gives way, and as she falls, the treasure begins to rain down on her. She lands pinned under debris, with water rising and coins falling on her. The cause of her downfall will also be her salvation, though, as she notices that the cursed mirror is buoyant. She climbs on top and uses it as a raft to escape from the area. She tells the team that after she'd reached safety, she smashed the mirror and used the shards to make the crystal goblets they were drinking out of. And she warns them not to look too closely at them. And that's the end of this book. I did like it because I do like the WildCATs, but the fact that the cover shows this awesome image of Deathblow and that he's not in the book at all, and they really should have just marketed this as a WildCATs Halloween special. As a little bonus, we get a 2-page spread of a character called the Lone One. Now, he's some cool-looking shaman-type guy who is wearing the skin of somebody as a mask. And because they don't make them like they used to, I'm going to show you guys some of the house ads that they put in this issue. The first one is for a Wetworks Chromium trading card set. Wetworks was a really cool concept. They were like a Black Ops military team who, on one mission, encountered some alien artifacts that bonded this gold armor onto each of the member of the team, and they end up fighting a lot of like vampires and werewolves. So it's kind of like supernatural paramilitary. Anyways, this card set contains art from some big names like Whilce Portacio, he's the one who created Wetworks, Jim Lee, obviously, Kevin Maguire, who did the 80s Justice League, Mike Wieringo, who unfortunately passed away, but he did the Fantastic Four run that I think he won some awards for. You've got Jay Lee here, who I think pretty much just does covers at this point. The last interior artwork I think I saw him do was the Dark Tower series for Marvel. Humberto Ramos, who created the cliffhanger series Crimson and has done a lot of work at Marvel on the X-Men, Wolverine, and Spider-Man titles. Tim Bradstreet, who's an amazing artist that did most of the covers for the Garth Ennis Marvel Knights Punisher series. So it's just a bunch of great artists collaborating on a card set of a really cool premise. And of course, being the 90s, you got to have your Chase Chromium holographic cards. The next ad is for an appearance that artist J. Scott Campbell is making at a comic book store in Belgium. It's weird that back in the day you'd see ads like this for just a single stop. This is a really weird feeling ad. You can tell that this is from a very indie kind of comic publisher. Anyways, J. Scott Campbell was a hot superstar artist at the time for drawing gorgeous looking women in the Gen 13 series for WildStorm. And of course, he would later go on to create the Danger Girl series for Cliffhanger. The next ad is for, again, more trading cards for a series called Evangeline. She was a fallen angel. Anyways, much like the Wetworks cards, you've got Chromium Edition Chase cards, and this one apparently has glow-in-the-dark cards. Again, you've got a lot of huge comic names, a lot of similarities to the Wetworks ones we just talked about. This one also has like Tom Rainey and Rob Liefeld. And apparently some of the cards are from the real-life model that they used as the basis for the character model. And her name is Kathy Christian. Next ad is a 2-page spread for a character called Cybernary. This is for the first 5-issue miniseries. They did another mini later on once DC had published it called Cybernary 2.0. Anyways, if you're familiar with the WildStorm universe, you might recognize the name Kaizen Gamora. He was kind of like the WildStorm's Doctor Doom in the sense that he was the leader of this nation state, and there's a lot of like sort of terrorist stuff coming out of there, but you couldn't really depose him. Anyways, Cybernary was Gamora's daughter who died or something and was rebuilt or brought back to life through the use of cybernetics. I remember the series being really cool. I liked the second one a lot too. I don't think she had much impact in the larger WildStorm universe, but it's been a minute since I've read a lot of that stuff. The next ad is actually also for Cybernary, and it's promoting the fact that the Cybernary artists Jeff Rebner and Richard Friend are going to be doing some live signings in California at Golden Apple Comics. Now, these are going to be taking place on Saturday, November 18th, 1995, so you might want to get your time machine ready. Here we've got an ad for the very awesome Simon Bisely cover to this book as a chromium glow-in-the-dark poster. Reading through this ad really kind of takes you back and shows you what a different time the mid-90s was. So I'll just read some of the text here for you. Question. Okay, so it's a cool cover and it's chromium registered trademark, and it glows in the dark. What good's that going to do me when the comic is packed away in a long box in my closet? Answer. It's not just a cover, though. It's a poster, too. Now you can hang the Simon Bisely painted cover from WildStorm's Chamber of Horrors on your wall. Order this huge 19-inch by 27-inch glow-in-the-dark chromium registered trademark poster directly from WildStorm Productions. Question. Sure. Do I look like I'm made of money? Answer. All you pay for this amazing poster is $29.95 plus $5.50 for shipping and handling. California residents must pay 7% sales tax. We accept checks, money orders, MasterCard, or Visa. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For credit card orders only, call Kathy Recker at whatever, between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific time, or fax her at fax number. Checks and money orders should be mailed and must be payable to Aegis Entertainment. So it's weird to think there was a time when paying with credit card wasn't standard. And if you wanted to pay with credit card, you actually had to directly call them and work out some kind of transaction over the phone. The fact that you could still mail checks and money orders in, this ad is definitely a sign of its times. Next up is an ad for yet even more trading cards, this time for Sam Keith's The Max. The Max actually had a show on HBO, so you may have seen that. Like the last two card sets, this one also includes brand new art from some big name artists. Jim Lee again, but WildStorm was his baby. Kevin Nolan, Bruce Timm, who created the Batman animated series in the DC animated universe look. Mike Allred, who created Madman and did the Ecstatic stuff and the Dupe stuff for Marvel. Michael Golden, who is a classic old school comic book artist. And Simon Bisely, who does great artwork, especially you saw on the cover of this, so it would be cool to see his take on the Max. And finally, the last ad in this book is also for the Max. It's to promote a crossover between the team Gen 13 and the Max. It's got some recognizable talent on it. It's written by Bill Messner-Loebs, who I believe did the rebooted Wally West Flash in the 80s after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And the artist is Tom Coker, who is somebody whose name I recognize, and I can tell you that I like their art style, but I could not tell you the name of a single book or issue that they've done off the top of my head. Anyways, that's it for this issue. Feel free to share your thoughts on your feelings on Halloween comic book specials, and otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.